Hey, Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box Podcast. My name's Gary, and this is not our weekly episode, as you would expect, but we are back with the Roundtable, which is going to be awesome. So I'm joined by four of our awesome writing team. I'm going to bring those guys on in a second, but I'm going to jam to the theme tune just for a bit. So, joining me on the November Roundtable. It's been a while, yes, aware. It's been a while, but it's good to have these guys back. First of all, Maria, how are you doing, darling?
Yeah, I'm great, Gary. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Good. Harry, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Despite this miserable weather, very well.
Yep. Welcome to the UK in November. Matt, how are you, good sir?
Very well, thank you. Really pleased to be back with you awesome people.
Good. And Mr. Mark, how are you doing, bud?
I'm all right. I've just had to chase a dog around my neighbourhood, so that's fun. Just shouting Billy round the street like I'm in this Lloyd's in the late 60s, just getting annoyed at William Hartnell.
Did you have a pair of slippers on, or did you put your trainers on?
I threw on a pair of boots. My girlfriend did not, and I was up when I found him first, and she had to get up on a grassy verge in socks, so that wasn't pleasant. I think I can see why K9 is just, you can't really do grass. It's much easier to just call them back. Just grinds to a halt.
It's way easier.
Sorted.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you very much, guys, for taking some time out of your evening. I know all you guys are busy and whatnot, so thank you very much. This is the November Roundtable. Before we crack on and getting the thoughts from these guys on the power of the Doctor, make sure that you are subscribing and following to this podcast in your preferred podcast app of choice. You can do that via our website. There are links on there to go off to the popular podcast apps, etc., which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. Plus, you can listen to free on there. Plus, you can check out all of the articles and reviews from our amazing writing team. So make sure you go and check all those out. And lastly, you can dive into our free Discord server if you like and chat to lots of other cool Who fans over there. So Adam and I have already done our review of The Power of the Doctor. I've got a few thoughts on a couple of bits that I didn't get a chance to talk about in that review, but mainly I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this stuff. So it's a bit of a big one. We've got roughly an hour, so I want to try and get the bigger points in if possible, and then we'll save some of the smaller deets towards the end. So let's pick a theme to kick off with. Then let's go with. Shall we talk about the monsters of this episode and what you thought about their inclusion and their purpose in this episode? So I'm referring obviously to the Daleks, the Cybermen, and then we'll finish up this bit with the Master, of course. So our thoughts on those were kind of cool. They had their cool little moments throughout the episode, but we felt like they were a little bit sort of surplus to requirement. They were there for namesake, as a thing that the Master had put together, concocted in this grand scheme. But they didn't really have a mind of their own, if that makes sense. That was our sort of overall feeling. So no order as such, just jump in as you feel free. So Daleks and Cybermen, what do you guys think? Don't be shy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in first. I'll be brave. I enjoyed them being there. I really enjoyed the Cyber Masters. I think they're almost like the tattoo design on them. Really cool. I'm not sure about the headpiece, but thankfully they kind of got rid of that mostly. Apart from like what would be, I don't know, maybe like the Cyber Master controller. But they were really good. I enjoyed them a lot, and I thought that they were good in the new unit base. It provided a bit of a threat, especially when they were taking Kate Stewart down to be converted. That was, her screams were terrible. But the Daleks didn't really see much point in them. I do agree that they were there just for namesake, and they didn't really add much to the story. Although, saying that, one of my favourite bits in this whole story is when the Rasputin song comes on. And I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. But just as he goes absolutely bananas, the Cyberman and the Dalek look at each other, and you can hear the mechanical noise, and then they're just sort of looking at each other thinking, yeah, we might have chosen badly here. He might be a bit madder than us. But apart from that, I just enjoyed the whole ride, I should say.
Okie dokie. Interesting. Mark, what did you reckon?
I mean, I think I'm going to preface everything about Power of the Doctor with, let's be honest, this is the BBC Centenary special. So I think it kind of has to have like a certain bunch of elements in it to kind of make it a celebration of the BBC, a celebration of one of its biggest shows, Doctor Who. So of course they're kind of in there. And I think it doesn't feel like they're there just to pay lip service. I think the opening sequence on the train is pretty good. I mean, it's the Cybermen, like it's 80s Cybermen where they're basically just a robot army rather than kind of the full horror of what the Cybermen actually are. But then, to be honest, that's what Doctor Who's done with the Cybermen for decades. I thought it was nice to see a Shadbat, but he's the one I don't think really needs to be there. Because I think Villa Diodati and Ascension of the Cybermen, he's amazing. But then it's kind of just, he's just the kind of voice of the Cybermen in the way that Davros kind of gets wheeled out after Genesis, and he's rarely as interesting as he is in Genesis when he gets kind of wheeled out again. I think they were fine. The Daleks were being Dalek-y in a volcano. Ace got to smash one up again in HD. That was nice. So yeah, it felt like just a big daft Doctor Who celebration, and that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So a bit of a daft carry-on. You have to have them in there because it's a celebration, of course. And yeah, I read you. Okay, Harry, what are your thoughts on those guys?
Well, I'm a simple man. If I have Dalek, Cybermen, and the Master in the same episode, I think it's lit. I love it. And yeah, they were kind of surplus to requirements, but as Mark said, it's a big celebratory bash really for the centenary, so it was fitting. I think that the idea of a kind of rogue Dalek or like Dalek gone good is kind of been done before, and that wasn't really that interesting. But I love the sort of I love the Cybermen and the Master being in cahoots with each other like they were at the end of Series 12 and all that stuff carrying on. And I just love Sacha Down as the Master. I think he's fantastic in the role, and his plan was one of the most hilarious ever. And when he was wearing all of those costume bits from all the different Doctors, it was just hilarious. I loved it. I couldn't tell whether it was dumb or genius. I think it was probably a bit of both. I thought all three of them were great. Maybe not the Daleks so much, but I like seeing Daleks, so yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. Dumb and genius. Interesting. Maria, coming to you, your favourite Doctor from your favourite era. What did you think to those?
I think the Cybermen, I actually enjoyed their inclusion in it. I mean, I still don't like the way they look because they are Cybermasters, and when I look at them, I kind of have to laugh because they look like they've got a doily on their heads. But I thought the Cybermen were actually used pretty well. I mean, obviously they were there inside unit, and you had Ashad kind of directing them, and they were there basically as an army, but I thought they were quite well used, and I liked them. The Daleks I was a bit confused actually as to what their purpose was within the story. I kind of felt, I know there were lots of classic references back to things like the Daleks master plan and and the Dalek invasion of Earth and all that kind of stuff. There were classic references in there, but they felt a little bit surplus, as everyone else has kind of said. But yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag, but I kind of understand it in the sense that it is a centenary special, so I suppose you couldn't have it really without the Daleks, but they didn't feel like they had a purpose within the story. And I think one of the funniest things was when they were all kind of lined up in the Summer Palace, and the Master was obviously, he was kind of staging his plan and everything around the Doctor, and it was kind of like it was quite funny just seeing them kind of standing there, because normally you'd be expecting them to be kind of running around killing people, exterminating people, but they were kind of quite passive as well. But yeah, I think it was probably right to include both of them. If you're going to go out on a special like Chris Chibnall is, go out big, bring them back. Use them in the story. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
Cool. Yeah, as Mark mentioned, it's if it's going to be the centenary, then why not throw them in there? Yeah. What did you guys think? Before we get on to the Master, just very quickly, talking of the Daleks, we had the rogue Dalek, the undercover Dalek that has essentially gone a complete 180 on what you would expect from any Dalek to do in any situation, which is to kind of have a bit of self-awareness of its own kind, and to be just miffed off. Basically, I've got no beep button, but miffed off with how its own race is being perceived and how it's going to progress, and just doesn't want any part of it. So it's like, I can't watch this happen. So the alternative is to contact our arch nemesis and get the Doctor to take care of it. So what did you guys think to the little rogue Dalek? Because that was one of the things that I didn't mind, because rarely, as this happens, I'm going to say this, I didn't mind at all Jodie Whittaker's performance when she was dealing with that Dalek, when she first sees it in the TARDIS and she flips out, and then she's very untrusting, as you would expect, and all that stuff. So that was a cool little nugget, which we didn't really see too much throughout the story, but I thought that was cool. Matt, the rogue Dalek. A lot of people said that should have been Rusty. I'm not sure on that, but what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, Rusty's sort of timeline was started and finished in the Capaldi era, right up into the last episode. I think to include him in Jodie's last episode might be just a bit too much. I think that's done. But I mean, 2 Daleks out of billions upon billions upon billions of Daleks that think that the Dalek race is supreme. For them to think, those 2 to think that maybe this isn't right anymore, I don't think it's overdone. I thought it did hark back to Rusty all the time that it was going on. But I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. And like you said, Gary, I think Jodie's performance when dealing with the rogue Dalek was really, really good. Top class. Cool. Whether that's to do with the writing as well as her performance. But I think it's, mostly just her performance at this stage.
Okay, yeah, fair dues. Harry, what do you reckon?
I mean, yeah, like I say, we've sort of trod that ground before, and it should have been Rusty. It would have been nice. It would have been nice to have that extra cameo in that sort of sea of cameos that we got throughout the episode. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I think that it just kind of got lost in everything that was going on. It could have been a really interesting idea, and I think it's always an interesting idea when you get a Dalek that behaves a little bit differently. But yeah, it just kind of got a bit lost in the sort of this bubbling cauldron of ideas that Chibnall had to contend with.
Yeah. Are you suggesting that Chris Chibnall wrote something that wasn't good and did have certain elements that got lost? Is that what you're kind of insinuating there?
I mean,
a little bit.
I wouldn't say that it was. I mean, I thought it was I mean, you mean the just the plot point of the Rogue Dalek, right?
I'm being extremely sarcastic, Harry.
You're being extremely sarcastic. Cool. Sometimes that goes over my autistic head. I do apologise.
Sorry, dude. Yeah,
it's
okay.
all right.
Yeah, so yeah, when you see Daleks behave differently, it definitely does have it has something to it, because yeah, it's, first of all, it can be unexpected. This was the reason why it's cool for me, because it was unexpected. Like, it wasn't like you knew roughly what you were going into with a story like Dalek, where you knew that was going to be a bit of a twist on the whole thing anyway. But this was really unexpected. You didn't at all expect to see that Dalek pop up in the TARDIS and start to do that stuff. So yeah, but I read you did. Yeah. Mark, Rogue Dalek, what were your thoughts on that little guy?
I mean, first of all, I think they were pushing their luck with the Adric reference, so you're not getting away with a Rusty reference in this, let's be honest. No, who remembers Rusty other than people like us? But I think the idea of a rogue Dalek is a good one, but it never seems to be... Like, it's kind of come up into the Dalek, it comes up in this, but it never actually... It should be its own kind of story. Because in Into the Dalek, it's kind of just the ending, is that because of what the Doctor's done, he kind of creates this Dalek that's aware of itself. In this, it's kind of just an element to get the wheels in motion for the Master's plan. It would be good to actually kind of see a kind of Dalek splinter group. I think it's one of the last few interesting things you could probably do with the Daleks now is have that kind of internal conflict of... you know, what actually constitutes a pure Dalek and, you know, all that kind of thing. Which you've kind of had with your Imperial Daleks and your, you know, what I can't remember, Rogue Daleks. I think they were referred to Renegade Daleks in the 80s. But, yeah, it'd be nice to see it done with a bit more of budget and things like that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that would be cool to have an entire story or an arc of a series or something dedicated to that. That'd be cool, yeah. Okay, same to you, Maria. And then when you're done with the Dalek... what your thoughts on that was. Tell us what you thought of the Master being back and Sacha Dhawan's performance throughout this one, then, because he had a fairly big old part to play in this one.
Yeah, so with regards to the Dalek, I kind of agree with what Mark was saying. I think it's a really interesting idea to actually have Daleks that are kind of starting to think for themselves, and because I seem to remember in some of the older Dalek stories, some of the black and white ones, that you know you had these episodes where the Daleks had quite human qualities in some ways. You know, they're quite cunning and manipulative, and you know, and I quite like the idea of you know, having a Dalek that's kind of starting to think and kind of come out from beyond the group think. So yeah, I agree with Mark. It would be really interesting to see maybe an arc with this kind of, you know, story kind of building a little bit more, because obviously one rogue Dalek on its own isn't going to do very much, but you know, what could happen if there was a group, you know, it could be quite an exciting idea to explore, you know, and maybe something that was you know, that had maybe more than one episode, maybe something that was over a series. You know, it'd be quite interesting to see it, because I don't think they've really explored the Daleks in that way very much. So, and I quite like the idea of kind of, you know, the Daleks fighting amongst themselves. I think it's quite a nice concept to explore. So with regards to Sacha, I must admit, you know, the thought of Sacha Dhawan being the Master, sometimes because he's quite manic, I'm not always sure, you know, how I'm going to feel about it. But I actually really enjoyed his performance. I mean, yeah, there are some quite manic elements, and you know, he does seem to have, you know, really lost his head this time, you know, with his grand plan. But Sacha actually, you know, he's actually really exciting to watch as the Master. You know, what I really like about him is the quiet moments. So, you know, when he's being Rasputin, and he's, you know, and he's in the Summer Palace hypnotizing the Tsarina and masters are. It's those quiet moments, because sometimes it's just the way that he kind of uses his face and the expressions that he uses. It's a bit more menacing than when he's actually on full throttle with the manic mania and kind of dancing around like a little wimp, But yeah, I really enjoyed his performance. He was really. He showed so many sides to the master, I think. I quite liked the kind of self-pity that he has sometimes about himself, and the hatred that he has for himself. And but then there are those moments where he's just completely loopy. So I really enjoyed it, and I never really think of him as my favourite master, but no, he was actually really exciting to watch, and he dominates the screen when he's on it. I mean, to be fair, you can't take your eyes off him a little bit, when he's there. So, he was actually really good.
Cool. Okay. So I think I get what you mean as well, because for the most part, he was very twitchy and jumpy and just this maniacal kind of crazy character. So, yeah, I get that. And those quieter moments, especially after... Just after he went through the forced regeneration and he was in the Doctor's TARDIS and that kind of stuff, he was very much, just contemplating and scheming rather than, being crazy. So, I totally get that. Nice one. Harry, the Master. Hit us.
The Master, indeed. Maria, you tapped into something very interesting there about the Master's self-loathing and self-hatred. And I think that's something which is really interesting about this particular incarnation, the fact that he felt less than the Doctor because he realised that everything about him it came from the Doctor, if you still consider that canon, but we won't get into that. I think that, like I say, Sacha Darwin is absolutely dazzling, and I think that his, the sort of maniacal Joker-esque master, it's been done before. John Sim kind of did that, but I think something about Sacha's approach to it feels like there's a lack of control. I felt like John Sim's approach to the master was very, very prepared and very controlled, whereas there's something about Sacha that's a little bit more unhinged and a little bit more unnerving in that way. Can't put my finger on it, and we don't know what their approaches were really. Kind of only they know that. But from what I can tell, that's kind of how I interpret it. And I just think he's absolutely magnetic. I mean, it would be a shame if this is his last appearance, and if it is, then I'll miss him. He was great.
Yeah. I thought about that, whether this would be it for him. I have a feeling it won't be, but we'll see. Yeah, Mark, what do you reckon, Tim?
I think he's possibly my second favourite master after Delgado, who is, of course, the OG. You can't top Delgado. And I think the thing with Delgado and the thing with Sacha is that, Delgado is very much the kind of evil version of John Pertwee's Doctor. And John Sim was very much the kind of evil version of David Tennant. And that's where that kind of mania comes from, is that, the 10th Doctor is all over the shop as well. And the 13th Doctor is that kind of like freewheeling, 1 minute she's deadly serious, 1 minute she's, eating custard creams, all that kind of thing. So I think as her master, I think Sacha Dhawan's brilliant, because it's the same dynamic, but on the darker side, it's 1 minute he's a kind of cold, calculating villain. The next minute he is, I absolutely love that the master's plan is essentially built around a joke involving a Boney M record. I mean, that's brilliant. For the guy that, for the guy that loves the Clangers, he loves the Teletubbies, he loves Scissor Sisters, of course he's going to love Boney M, and of course he's going to put a whole plan around defeating the Doctor whilst doing a dance number. It's brilliant. It's absolutely demented. So yeah, I love him. I think, and the fact he has a Big Finish box set makes me feel that we're not going to see him again anytime soon, which would be a shame. But then also, actually, I think once David Tennant turns into Ncuti Gatwa, I wouldn't be that sad if the show just goes in a completely new direction and doesn't kind of pull from all the kind of 2005 to 2023 stuff and kind of goes somewhere different, but we'll see.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. I have a feeling that he'll pop up somewhere. There'll be like a special in some decade, and he'll be back as like an old master. So I think so. Cool. Okay, Matt, do you like this master or no? Relative to the story, this particular story. Here we go. Muted again. Always muted. He doesn't even realise it. There we go.
Sorry.
Try again, dude.
Here we go. Right, take two. We'll just cut there. So Sacha Dhawan's performance, I just think it's delicious to see on screen. He, like Maria said, he takes hold of every scene and he's so captivating. The amount of different roles that he portrays in this one single episode, it must be at least 4 or 5 different personalities. I know people think that sometimes he goes a bit over the top, but I disagree. I think if you were in his shoes and as a child get put in front of the untempered schism and you go completely mad, it's bound to do this to you. And I think it was done with Sim, like Mark said, very controlled, and it was let out in short bursts. But as Harry says, it doesn't feel controlled at all when it comes to Dhawan's master. It feels like it kind of explodes out of him, which I think suits his master down to the ground. I love how he can go from the quiet sort of contemplating, almost Delgado-ish master to just absolutely wacky and really evil. I think this is the most evil that the master has gotten in New Who, for lack of a better phrase, especially at the end when he knew he'd lost and he could not take that the Doctor was going to survive this, and his plan had utterly failed. He couldn't have it, and there was no friendship left in those eyes. It was pure hate, and he just had to do what he did. But Sacha's master is by far. Don't take this lightly, because I love each of the masters in their own way, but he is my favourite master, and I'll be really, really sad if we don't see him again. With Big Finish, I think it's an excellent platform, and with his bursting personalities, it'll work really well. But I'd love to see him on screen again as well.
Interesting. I like your new adjectives.
On the subject of the Big Finish thing, I just wonder how it's going to work, other than just doing it's Doctor Who but evil, which is kind of what we had at the in Power of the Doctor, when he gets to be the Doctor, and it's this character assassination thing where he goes, right, I'm the Doctor now, and I'm going to just drag the Doctor's name through the mud by doing lots of just solving problems in really terrible ways. I don't know, just very interested as to how that will work out. And also, one last thing on the Master I just wanted to point out, a lot of people kind of talk about John Sim and Michelle Gomez and Sacha Dhawan as, they're too crazy, they're too, over the top, they're too... Has anybody seen Anthony Ainley? The guy dresses as an Oriental magician for no particular reason, and then dresses up as a scarecrow on the off chance that the Doctor might turn up in Newcastle in the 1800s. Come on, they're not nearly as mental as Ainley.
Yeah, Ainley was so Delgado's like the OG kind of sinister, kind of dark master, whereas Ainley's like the OG crazy. Like the first inkling that this character might be a little bit unhinged and a bit weird. Yeah, I totally get that, dude. Okay, cool. I want to kind of finish up with talking about the Doctor herself and Jodie's performance a little bit and how it ended up with her regeneration a tiny little bit on David Tennant at the end. Before that, though, I'd like to talk about some companions, if I may. So we have a very quick departure. We say goodbye to Dan relatively quickly in this one, and then we have Yaz throughout the whole thing. But then we're also joined by a couple of familiar faces. So Maria, what were your thoughts on Dan and Yaz? But then also, did you enjoy having Tegan and Ace back?
Okay. Well, Dan, I was a bit disappointed that he left so quickly, because they kind of seemed to kind of dispatch him, 10 minutes into the story. But I kind of understood why, because, you can see from obviously the aims of this story that there's so much packed into it. That Dan probably wouldn't have had a substantial role within it, and obviously you've got a return of some classic companions as well. So I kind of understood why they did it. It was probably a good ending for him, rather than kill him off. I didn't mind that he left, and I'm glad that he's alive. I felt a bit sorry for him because his house obviously still hasn't come back. So he's going to be living with his mum and dad for the foreseeable future. So I felt a bit sorry for him about that. With regards to Yaz, you can obviously see there's a strong connection between her and the Doctor. And I'm glad that they didn't kind of make too big a deal about their relationship. And but I liked, what Yaz, had to do. I liked her interactions with the Master, when he became the Doctor. She was quite strong, and, there were some funny bits, obviously, with all the Post-it notes that she'd kind of collected. I quite enjoyed I thought when she was with the Doctor, I thought it was quite understated between them. So I quite liked that. And I thought she was actually quite good in this. With the return of the classic companions, well, what can I say? I was so excited to kind of know that they were coming back. And I feel, obviously, with Chris Chibnall, this is probably the era that he probably knows the best, I would imagine, being of the age that he was. So I thought he actually wrote Tegan and Ace really well. I really enjoyed their kind of, I liked Tegan's grumpiness, and I liked Ace's character as well. I thought they were very true to kind of who they were as characters before. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved that Tegan and Ace were working together.
Here we go.
Oh,
Every time. Every round table, listener, we have at least one person that just drops off. So I think Maria was getting at that she liked Yaz's strength throughout the episode. There were some nice moments with her and the Doctor, and she was uber excited to see Tegan and Ace back, and she thought that they were written very well. And she'll probably pop back up in a minute, so we'll get her thoughts. But okay, Matt, companions, make sure you're not muted. Let us know.
I don't think I am. I think I'm good. No, I think Dan, it was right for him, I think, to leave. I think it was a right writing decision for him to be, for him to leave so early on, because there's so many companions in this, so many additional cast, that in Flux, when it was the three of them, he felt a little useless at times. Imagine what he'd be like with all of these other companions that people are dying to have screen time with. I really liked Dan, but at the end of the day, he was just too evil for the TARDIS. He just, with a hole, he's just gone. He's,
Yeah.
But I think if the Doctor kept him around anymore, he would have just pan-fried the TARDIS to death.
Jesus, okay.
Moving on from that, I think Yaz, now it was just the Doctor and Yaz. She was much better. There was so much more dynamic between the two. And she was strong and had a lot to offer instead of just questions. Why are you doing that? Why is this happening? I don't like that, Doctor, tell me, and that sort of thing. So I think that was really good. With Tegan and Ace, that was magical. It was completely magical. They both just slipped completely back into their roles as if no time had passed. I do think, though, that after reading At Childhood's End, I was a little bit sad to think that they couldn't have written in a way that they could incorporate that story, because they just had to completely wipe it as non-canon. But I think it wouldn't have taken much to have had that included. But then, I'm not the head writer, so I don't know. Now, with Tegan, it was amazing that she was just so sassy, and just as she was, I think I was crying when the Doctor came and picked her up, and she was like, "Yes, I would like to go into the TARDIS." Hands down, best moment of Tegan in this whole episode. And yeah, I know Graham popping up was really nice. The interactions between him and Ace were really good. They had nice chemistry for what little screen time they had. But yeah, I think on the whole, they were all really good. Good.
Nice. Okay, Harry, over to you.
Oh, well, there's just so much to talk about, isn't there, in terms of companions? It's, it's a right plethora. Yeah, I mean, regarding Dan, I echo these guys' thoughts. It made sense for him to leave early on. But yeah, I think it would have been nice if he had a bit more of a send off. He could have reunited with Diane, or we could have, seen him kick back, relax, and have some soup. If you know, you know. But anyway, I thought that Yaz was really good in this, and it was a treat to see Tegan and Ace in it, and see them flourish and have those lovely scenes with their doctors. Seeing Graham was fantastic, even though it made no sense that he just randomly turned up in that volcano. I guess Graham has superpowers now, so I mean, I'm down with that. That's cool. That's canon. And yeah, the bit at the end with the sort of companions anonymous, with Mel and Joe and I think of the actor's name, but Ian, like that was fab. And I mean, especially seeing Ian after so many different iterations of the show, the fact that he was in the very first episode of Doctor Who and the very latest episode of Doctor Who just absolutely blows my mind. What a legend, William Russell, what a legend.
Yes.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was really lovely.
That was very cool. And you're right, what a legend, an absolute legend.
He's 98 years old, isn't he?
He is
97.
97.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
Close enough. I mean, wow. Yeah, It's crazy. And I went to a event recently at the Sci-Fi Museum in Allendale. I visited again, and they did a special event. And Sophie Aldred was there, talking about that day when they filmed that scene, and just talking about how William Russell, he's kind, bless him, he's kind of, he was kind of a bit confused. He wasn't really sure what was going on. But everyone was so lovely to him, and just how, tender and lovely that day was, I mean, it's a really beautiful thing. Like the fact that he came back, it's, what a legend, utmost respect.
Indeedy. Yes. Okay. Before I go to Mark with your thoughts on the companions, straight after that, Mark, because Mark might have to leave us because he's a busy guy. He's going to go and do some other podcast recording. So I want to get your thoughts on this stuff. So after companions, can you then follow up with what you felt was cool around the classic Doctors popping up, and then what you thought to Jodie's performance and into the regeneration with Tennant. So a lot to hit you with, but hit us back.
So that's a tall order. Well, I mean, I can talk about Ace and Tegan in relation to the classic Doctors, so that's fine. In terms of Dan, I do feel as if the kind of pre-COVID version of Series 13 would have actually probably dedicated the whole finale to Dan's kind of near-death experience and then his eventual departure. But obviously because of how things have changed and how they had to kind of shorten the series, and then there was like an extra special, it's kind of just like they just kind of saved it for the kind of pre-titles. I did think it was a bit harsh that, when the Doctor lets Amy and Rory off, he buys them a house, he gives them a fancy car. The Doctor just leaves Dan with his tiny house. It's not very nice.
It's because he's evil.
Well, maybe yeah, that is maybe it. But is it any wonder that he's evil, given he's been left with a tiny house?
It's a villain's origin.
I'd go evil as well.
No benefits whatsoever.
So yeah, I mean, I thought that was fine. I mean, I thought Yaz was great, and I think actually she was really underserved by her departure, because it is just like, look, I'm going to change into somebody else now, and you probably won't fancy me, so I guess I'll just drop you off at the park. Is that all right?
Ooh.
That's kind of how it plays out, and it's a really weird ending.
Bit salty.
Rather than kind of, because there's a moment where the Doctor gets shot. Well, kind of the Master shoots the thing that shoots the Doctor, and Yaz carries her back to the TARDIS like, fucking, this is brilliant. And I, for a second, thought that the Doctor was actually just going to be like, wasn't going to regenerate, and they were going to think that the Doctor was dead. And then right at the end, like at the end of Carrie, David Tennant would have just like pulled himself out of the grave. Mm-hmm. But no, that's not what we got. But I think it would have been a slightly better ending, Yaz thinking the Doctor was dead rather than Yaz just being told, listen, I'm going to be somebody else that you're not going to find attractive. See you later. So that was a bit of a shame. As for the classic companions, as I've said on this podcast, I'm not a big fan of the Fifth Doctor era, but I love Janet Fielding. I think she's one of the best things in that era, and she was great in this. Like, I knew Sophie Aldred was going to be brilliant, but Janet Fielding just really surprised me, because she didn't have much of an acting career after Doctor Who. She went into kind of being a talent agent. She does a lot of charity work in her local area. She doesn't do a lot of telly acting. So I was a bit like, oh, is it still going to work? And it just worked beautifully. I thought she was so great. And actually, as somebody who's not a fan of the Davison era, that scene with her and the kind of older Fifth Doctor, I kind of had a little cry. Thought it was beautiful. It's lovely. It's a lovely little moment. And I really liked, the Seventh Doctor and Ace as well. I thought Chibnall kind of came up with quite a fun way round the multi-Doctor and the kind of Doctor and Companions meeting again, which is, it's a sentient AI that picks up on the Doctor that you're most familiar with, but also adjusts it for your advancing years so that the Doctor looks kind of how they would have looked. It's like, I think it makes more sense than Stephen Moffat's time dilation or whatever it is. So that was lovely. And, having Jodie Whittaker kind of share scenes with all the other Doctors was brilliant. Paul McGann, that was the big... So I kind of gathered that all of them were back. I gathered that Ian Chesterton was back. And it was lovely to see him. And also... the guy was 3 years old when the BBC started. That's incredible. That's sorry, the BBC had been around for 3 years before William Russell was born. Amazing. What better tribute is that? But the big surprise for me was Paul McGann in full costume, refusing to do the robes. Amazing. And looking like he hasn't aged a day as well, which is just incredible. So yeah, it was just a real celebration of Doctor Who, which is weird because we've got the 60th anniversary next year, and it's the kind of stuff you would expect for an anniversary special. So I will be very interested to see what Russell does next year. But yeah, loved it. Sophie Aldred doing a knee slide across the floor to pick up a machine gun. Fantastic. No notes. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, it was the some of the scenes where you first saw Jodie interact with the classic Doctors. You thought, okay, this is really nice. It's very, I don't know, there was just something very lovely about how that was. So my hat does go off to Chibnall for that stuff. It was written very beautifully. But when you then saw the Tegan and Ace with their respective Doctors, that then just, the heartstrings were pulled on another level. That was just incredible how that was written. So yeah, no, I read you, dude. So Mark might stick around. He might need to go, but thank you so much for your thoughts on that stuff.
Thank you for having me, as ever. I'll write something again soon, I promise. I've got a whole thing planned, don't worry.
He will. Okay, right, so let's go to Maria. Now that your laptop's all juiced up and whatnot, what did you think to the Jodie's performance overall throughout the story, and then specifically how she interacted with the classic Doctors and then her regeneration at the end?
I really enjoyed Jodie's performance. I think I may have said it before that I quite like it when she's more serious rather than that kind of goofy kind of persona that she had kind of earlier in her era. What I liked was obviously there was a lot of jeopardy in this story. I mean, we knew she was going to regenerate, so there was probably quite there were some lighter moments. Obviously, she still can be quite funny, I suppose. But I quite liked her more serious kind of. I like it when she has a more serious persona. So I did actually enjoy her performance. I'm quite surprised to say that, really, because I've kind of not really enjoyed her era very much. But what I did like was the regeneration. I thought was kind of quite sweet, and it wasn't kind of full of angst like we get with some of the regenerations. So it was quite a nice kind of regeneration in that obviously she wanted to see the sunrise, and it felt it felt like she was kind of happy to kind of move on. I mean, I know obviously there was that bit with the interaction with the classic Doctors, and I to be honest, I went into this special, I didn't know who was in it except for Ace and Tegan, so seeing a lot of all the classic kind of companions and the Doctors, that was all kind of a surprise to me because I didn't know that was coming up. So there was some really nice touches in the script. I'll doff my cap to Chris Chibnall, but he actually seemed to understand what fans want to see in in a story. So I enjoyed seeing the classic Doctors, and because I didn't know any of them were coming back. I thought their interactions were quite good. I like the idea of having this point where there's a point of no return once you regenerate, and the idea that you can pull back from that and come back from that. So I thought that was a really nice idea. But yeah, I really enjoyed the regeneration. As I say, it wasn't full of angst, and there wasn't all this kind of I don't want to go, and it was a lovely moment, and it was really well filmed. I enjoyed it. It kind of felt it was probably quite true to her character, because there is a kind of like childish kind of joy about her. So I suppose it was quite true to who she is as a Doctor. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And it's lovely to see David Tennant back. I mean, I didn't know he was gonna, he was coming back in that way. So, I was kind of like everyone else, probably thinking, what? What? So it's exciting. Very happy to kind of see that at the end.
Cool, good stuff. Okay, let's go to Harry. Your thoughts on Jodie in the story, and her interaction with the classic Doctors, and then her regen into Mr. Tennant.
Well, it was definitely, I think, one of Jodie's best performances as the Doctor. I think, when she's being sort of the less kind of zany, the better, I think. When she's doing a really grounded kind of performance as the character, I really take to it. I think she does that exceptionally well. Her interactions with the classic Doctors were, they made me rather emotional. I think, they probably made a lot of us rather emotional. I think that, it was just great to see them all fabulous. That's all you could really say, really. I could go on all day about how fabulous that was to see all of them lot back. And her regeneration was stunning. Like, the shot, like, going out from wherever she was standing, it has a name, doesn't it? Like, where they sort of
controversial
filmed it on a green. That shot was stunning. Like, Segan's music as well, like, all that stuff. It was beautiful. And I love the optimistic tone of her final moments as well. It was, like Maria said, very fitting for her incarnation. So she definitely went out on a high, which is as the 13th Doctor would have said, brilliant.
Right, cool, good stuff. Okay, Matt, what did you think?
Echoing everybody's thoughts, her performance was top notch in this. And I think when you had your thoughts on the previous review, when you reviewed The Power of the Doctor with you and Adam, I echo what you were saying, and I'm a little bit frustrated that it took this long to get the best writing for her, because she was on fire. And a little bit of exposition here and there, but it was done in a way where it wasn't constant. It wasn't 45 minutes of exposition. It was as and when needed. And then I think her actual performance, I've always thought she gives it her all, but she's let down a lot. But I don't think that was the case in this. I think it was stellar. In regards to the classic Doctors, I think in a way she was almost acted as if she was humbled by meeting them, and I think it probably bleeds through from being humbled, meeting the people that have been in her shoes prior as an actor. I think it kind of made its way on the screen. I just think it was amazing. I could sit there and talk to you, like Harry said, for hours and days and weeks probably on how amazing that scene with the classic Doctors were. That's what we should have had in the 50th, but I'm just glad. I'm not bitter about that. I'm just glad we've actually seen it now. And if there was ever a time for a Paul McGann spin-off, I mean, it's now. RTD, we know you listen, so take notes.
He does. Yeah.
He does. And I think the regeneration was beautiful. It was such a refreshing change to have it outside of the TARDIS. Mm-hmm. And it paved its way to have that beautiful shot, not just fire and explosions and poor old TARDIS getting a beating just because the Doctor's regenerating. It was like I said, it was refreshing, and that where they filmed that was it was beautiful. Her last words, I love the fact that they changed that around, because I think that's really fitting. The tag "You're It" was just really fitting for her era. Whether you liked the jokey side a bit over the top sometimes, or not, it sums up her personality as a Doctor brilliantly.
Yes.
And I thought that they finally made the regeneration energy look really good.
Yeah, they kind of went back,
with that.
didn't they, to the old, the big sort of orange fireworks that exploded out of somebody. They kind of drifted away from that a little bit, didn't they, as we went into Capaldi and, So, yeah, it was good to see that back, the Eccleston Tennant kind of big regeneration energy that comes exploding. So, yeah, I agree, dude.
I was a little disappointed to see when Capaldi and Smith turned into Capaldi, that we didn't have it. So, yeah, it was lovely, like you say.
I was just going to say, I seeing her regeneration and having it outside the TARDIS was actually, I think a really positive move as well, because we've seen all of those regenerations inside the TARDIS, and I can't believe if that was green screened, it was actually really well done, because it did look stunning actually, the way it was filmed. So that was beautiful.
It was. Yeah. Okay, we're coming up to the hour now, so we're going to wrap this up. Before we close out, though, have you guys got any other thoughts or anything that we've missed that you wanted to throw up there and mention that you liked or disliked about this one? And I want to also finish up with asking you guys, are you excited for what's coming for Doctor Who next year? So let's go to Harry.
Yes. Just to kind of summarise, I thought Power of the Doctor was it was an absolute treat. I mean, other than kind of the first half an hour sort of taking a while to kind of get going and sort of be more interesting, I loved it. I thought it was great, and all the fan service it didn't feel like it was for the sake of it. It felt like it was good in terms of it felt like I had a storytelling justification to it, yeah, it was fab. It was really, really fab. And, the fact that we live in a world where David Tennant is the Doctor again is, I mean, come on, it's stuff that dreams are made of. And yeah, I'm so excited for next year. I don't want to wish my life away, but yeah, I can't wait for November next year. It's going to be wicked. I think we're in for a good time.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Agreed. Yes. Maria, what did you think? Anything else you want to mention about the episode? And are you looking forward to New Who that's coming round the corner?
I just want to say Power of the Doctor had lots of lovely moments that I really enjoyed. So there was things like, for instance, Ace jumping off the building and landing in the TARDIS, which I thought was really well done. Obviously there was Sacha Dhawan dancing to Boney M, which I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, that just made me laugh so much. I enjoyed seeing Vinder again. I mean, okay, he probably wasn't needed, but he was a bit of muscle that maybe the Doctor needed at the time. So it was actually nice to see Vinder as well. So it felt like Chris Chibnall was kind of trying to tie everything up in a nice little bow. So he brought back some of the classic stuff that he probably enjoyed. Obviously crammed in as much as he could into this story, but it actually worked for 90 minutes. I thought, it actually worked as a story, and I watched it quite closely to try and find loads of criticisms, but I couldn't really find that much. I actually enjoyed it, and I think Matt said it earlier. I think it's a real shame that it's only on the last story that Chris Chibnall has kind of given me what I wanted to see in Doctor Who, and kind of given me that kind of happiness that I wanted to find in the era. But I'm really glad he's gone out on a high, and the story was a really good story, and I am looking forward to seeing what happens next year. We've got a long time to wait, but I'm looking forward to the 3 specials, so it'll be exciting to see what comes with those, and what the second era of RTD is going to look like.
Good. Okay, so positive so far. Lastly, Matt, then, are you going to continue the positive train, or is this do you know what, I can't stand Russell T Davies, and I'm just not looking forward to this at all? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's the final episode I'm ever going to watch. No, I'm beyond excited for what that genius is going to bring to Doctor Who and beyond, with all this news that's coming our way of all these different avenues that he's taking the show. It's a brilliant, amazing time to be a Doctor Who fan, and I think we've got some really, really good times ahead. Going back to the story, I just wanted to add that I think the direction for this was stunning. The episode as a whole looked amazing. Especially that scene when Yaz and 13 are on top of the TARDIS with the ice creams.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah,
that is amazing. You can't fault that at all. It was beautiful, and I think, as Maria said, it was nice to see Vinder back. I think he's a character that we don't really get to know a lot in Flux. He's there a lot in Flux, but we don't get to know him at all, really. Same here. I think he was an obvious replacement for Captain Jack, in my opinion. But I didn't mind it because I like Vinder a lot, and I think he added to the story with especially when he wasn't afraid to shoot the Master. When it came to the fact that the Master thought he had his one last ditch effort that he could overcome Vinder and still win. And Vinder just having none of it. But I don't think maybe Yaz would have been able to, because she knew that the Doctor was still in there. Whereas Vinder, you give that opportunity to be able to just think, no, you know what, I'll do it. And he did. So apart from that, I think I just love the episode. At the end of when it finished, and I haven't had this in years with Doctor Who, but unfortunately, but when the credits rolled and after that amazing trailer, I just sat there for 2 or 3 minutes, just sort of staring into space. And I was kind of a bit fuzzy because all of this has happened. And I just thought, wow, that was amazing. That was an hour and a half of amazingness, if that's a word. And I just, that doesn't happen at all anymore, for me anyway. I'm sure it does for lots of people, but it was just lovely to feel like that again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's totally fair dues on that one, buddy. I think a lot of people who had drifted away slightly from the show throughout Jodie's era, who watched the finale, felt like that. They felt like this was just an absolute cracker of an hour and a half's worth of Who, and yeah, it did feel at the end like you just watched some amazing Who. So mission accomplished, I guess, even if it's not in a negative, but it's a bit late from Chibbers to be bringing the goods, so to speak. But maybe it'll age nicely, like some of the older stuff with Who, and in 10, 20 years time we'll look back on Jodie's era and be like, actually, yeah, some of those stories are pretty sweet, and maybe, who knows. Okay, so before we roll the final music, the end music, very quickly, scores out of 10, Maria.
Crikey. I don't know. 8.5 out of 10.
8.5.
Lovely. Harry.
I don't know. I can't say I've thought about it. I don't think it was quite a 10 out of 10. So let's give it a 9. It was great.
Cool. Okay. Matt.
I was fully expecting to say, 10 out of 10. I loved every second. But a point Mark raised about Yaz's exit, I didn't think about that before. But it struck a chord with me. And I'm not... I think it can go down to a 9.5 for me for that.
Shaving a bit off. I'll read you. Okay, on that note then, so I think the average from you guys, I think Mark gave us a 10 out of 10 earlier when he was giving us his thoughts on some stuff. So I think the average score from you lot is probably a 9. I think on that bombshell, let's roll the creds.
It's because we decided to do the drunk giraffe. I don't know where that came from, but there you go.
Yeah, some epic dance moves on display here, listener, that you can't see, unfortunately. Might have to live stream this one day, and you can show them
the scenes.
Your dance moves. Yeah, cutting some shapes here on the Big Blue Box. So that's going to wrap for the November roundtable. Thank you so much, peeps, for joining me and giving us your thoughts on the power of the Doctor. And it's been very cool to get your insight and your thoughts into that stuff, because you've all got such big brains, all such amazing minds where it concerns Doctor Who. So thank you so much. And thank you to Mark, who's not here with us at the moment. He had to shoot off. Thank you, as always, dude, for your thoughts too. I think on the next one, we'll have Jordan as well, hopefully. And we'll do all that stuff. So until the next roundtable, which hopefully won't be as long this time as this one, the gap between this one, let's finish with a good old Allons-y, shall we? Right, let's do it.